This is the hole that goes straight to my heart. And this is the tube that goes straight to my heart. And this is the alcohol pad that cleans the tube that goes straight to my heart. And this is the salt water that goes straight to my heart. This is the cap of the salt water that goes straight to my heart. That is the level of the salt water that goes straight to my heart. So I pull it back and then I can squeeze it out. So this is the salt water that goes straight to my heart. This is the lock to the tube that goes straight to my heart. And this is the salt water going straight into my heart. This is the ceftriaxone that goes straight into my heart. This is what will kill the bacteria that went straight to my heart. Quick change-a-roo. This is the ceftriaxone. Unfortunately, this will be very boring, as I can only push this at 10 seconds per notch, or roughly 5 minutes. But in the meantime, I will tell you about what it is like to fear death. Sometimes you wake up at night and you think it's over. You think that whatever it was that you were trying to do just can't be done. And it's better off if you just chill out and fold into the wave. Fold into the wave that's happening. You're like something in the world that's happening. And when it's over, it's over. And something else happens after that. Unfortunately, you won't ever be able to experience that. Unfortunately, the what's after won't contain you. Or at least a you that you know as you. But let's be honest, it probably won't be you. We push things into our bodies all the time. Earlier today, I pushed a Diet Dr. Pepper into my body, but through the usual methods of my mouth. I don't know. This is a funny way, if you think about it, that this tube allows me to put into my body something so directly. If I was an intravenous drug user, this would be awesome, but I'd probably overdose very quickly. which is why I have to go really slow with this one. This isn't even the most exciting one. There's another one, and it's even cooler. Because I don't have to do anything. It just does it for me. Like everything I want in the universe just to happen for me. And I can sit back, watch TV, try to read a book, write an angry email I'll never send, send an angry email I'll never write. Both of the drugs that I am taking today have to remain pretty cold as I take them, or before I take them, and then after I take them. I can feel it cold in my veins, which is weird, to say the least. When I was 8 years old, I was conscious for a catheter operation that they did in my heart. They went in through a very large vein in my leg, and they were going to inject some dye into my heart and use a very weird camera to watch the dye go throughout my body. Well, first off, it was surreal. You could feel, or I could feel, the thing going through my body. Only later in life, when I saw Alien, the movie, did I have a name or example to use when talking to people about what the feeling was like. I felt the thing crawl through my body to my heart. But during that procedure, the machine that was supposed to inject dye freaked out and wobbled and warbled and popped, and ink went all over the room. And as an 8-year-old lying naked in a room full of adults, I was scared to death. Luckily, it was a Catholic hospital, and there was a priest and a nun that were there. And they did their best to try to make me not freak out, which involved a lot of prayer, and the nun doing Bill Cosby impressions. Fellini made more sense because of this. So, the abuses of my own body, by myself and by others, have come to me to mean something which they probably don't mean at all, because nothing has true meaning. But I've taken that my body is just another thing in the world by which people may enact their ideas and practices upon. I have no specific quality of self, something that I try to overcome as much as I can. Needless to say, it's hard to know that your body is a series of parts that are interchangeable. Throughout my life, I have had parts of my body taken apart and replaced, mostly in my heart, primarily my heart. And that is fascinating. To everyone else, the heart is something that is really sacred, something that you don't speak ill of. It is the center of your emotions and self. We pound our chest. To me, though, that has always seemed to be a little funny, because I know the heart is much more mutable than we would like to think. It is just a muscle with a very important job, but a muscle nonetheless. Have you ever felt your heart go out of control? on some workout regimen that you did not design? Climbing some hill that you are not climbing? Running from some creature that is not in the room? Playing a drum solo for a band that never was? You have to kill the things inside of you that you don't want to be there. Both medically and non-medically speaking. Almost. Maybe I went too slow. But I guess there's no such thing as too slow when it comes to this sort of thing. So the next phase is another saline flush. This is the salt water that goes into my heart. So again, it is best to pull back, which will allow me to squeeze the bubble out so I don't send so much air into my valves. Wait for it. Flush it away. Goes all the way in. Gotta make sure, whoa, to clean out the tube. And now the most exciting part. This is a ball of gentamicin. Gentamicin will kill a lot. But I have to be careful because it can also destroy my hearing. We don't want that to happen. So, this is a very protective piece of plastic with this mesh. You can kind of see maybe through the light. And inside is a piece of rubber tubing that has been blown up with the gentamicin mixed with probably saline. It's amazing. Anyway, so this whole contraption will give me 100 milliliters an hour. First, this tube that is inside will be the first protection to make sure that the flow is correct. But then you follow this, you'll get to another stopgap, which looks like a little drum that will make sure that only 100 milliliters per hour goes into my body. It's always good to have two stopgaps. So let's check to see if there's any bubbles. Any bubbles at all? Small ones are okay. Small ones are okay. Let us go straight into my lungs. There's one right there. I can't tell how big it is. Can you see it? I'm going to try to drain that one out. Be careful. You don't know what's in store. first I'm going to release the little stop. And then the lock. And we'll watch it bubble. Ooh, beautiful. Beautiful. Let's see where that bubble goes. It's moved along. It's moved along. Lovely, lovely. Ooh. I'm gonna drop that drip and drip that drop. And stick it on. So, this is going to take an hour, and I don't think you want to watch that long. Ultimately, at the end, I just do another saline flush and then a heparin flush. The heparin helps to keep any blood clotting. This probably isn't very fun for you to watch. It's not about it being fun. It's about it being educational. And that's all that matters these days, is education. I believe in education. I believe it is the saving grace of our wonderful world. We can watch our children grow up to be cowboys if we educate them correctly. Some healthcare professionals call these grenades. The amount of material in this is probably worth somewhere around $3. And the gentamicin, or whatever you want to put into it, that price will vary. But theoretically, these can be sent all over the world as long as they're kept in the proper conditions and be used by people to meet their healthcare needs. It's just a piece of rubber tubing that's protected by plastic mesh to keep it from being broken. It's been pressurized, and the rubber tubing itself will collapse under its own tensile strength. And all we'll have left is a plastic bag and a tube inside with a filter and another filter. The bag slowly empties itself out, and then it's discarded. I bet it can be used again. It's relatively safe. Nothing's going into it, so you could refill it with gentamicin, but I don't think you could fill it with another drug. But it's so little material, it's so easy to just throw it away. It does its job, and then there's nothing else for it to do. So, it breathes out. That's all it does. Gentamicin, 160 milligrams. 100 milliliters per hour. Keep refrigerated. To get these drugs, I was in a bidding war with many home infusion companies. The company Advanced Care won out as the cheapest. It is still something that I cannot really afford, as my illness makes it difficult to do anything. So, I'll be paying them back for a while. But I'm very grateful. They undercut the next company by $2,000, which is amazing. That's $2,000 that I don't have to pay. But it's very difficult to get insurance for paying the rest of it, as it is a pre-existing condition. What do people do without healthcare? Suffer. So, in America, we have created two classes. Those that make too little, and those that make... Actually, there's three classes, I'm sorry. Those that make too little, four classes? say 4 classes. Alright. So, if I made less money than I do, quite considerably less money, I could have gotten all of the stuff basically free. But I would have had to make so little that I could not afford to pay for my apartment here in the city. So I would have had to live in government housing and also have had food stamps and probably be on welfare because it would be very hard. Or I guess I could have a low-paying job. But if you want to do anything in life, you have to work really hard. At least I've been told that. So I make enough money to live okay, but not enough to necessarily afford real health care. I'm an independent contractor, as many artists are in New York, because artists want freedom. They want to be able to do things, and that has bit me in the ass. I needed to be a slave to paying bills to an insurance company, because that is how you work in America. Unless you can get a job that does this for you, that pays those bills. But then you're dependent on that job. You have no freedom. You are attached to that job. You need it. And because you need it, you don't really see the cost of your health care at all. It's not something that you deal with at all. And hospitals know this, and healthcare and insurance companies know this. They know that if you are in a business company sort of deal and have insurance through them, that you pay your premiums and all sorts of stuff, but you never see the cost of something. And if you don't see a cost, how can you shop smartly? Lastly, there's people who are so well off that they don't need to worry about it. They could pay their bills purely by themselves, but you know, it makes more sense to buy insurance. So what about those people in the middle? The people who don't work for companies that provide healthcare? The people who are struggling? The government provides some assistance, but not really that much. Because, well, you're working, you're doing, you're being. So, how can we make healthcare work for everybody? I don't know. It doesn't seem like a possibility. Here you can kind of see it's already gotten a little looser. You can kind of pull back and you can see the webbing. Anyway, well, I have no answers. I'm a very poor artist with very poor ideas about art, let alone the world. But I don't understand why healthcare cannot be universal. Ideally, I want to be in a world where my neighbor is not sick, where the guy outside is not sick, where nobody is really that sick. Because, you know, if enough people get sick and can't take care of themselves, then that's where really bad things can happen, you know. It just doesn't make any sense. I know it sounds super crazy liberal. Ooh, I want universal healthcare. But honestly, you know, we can have things within reason. The hypochondriac can go to a psychologist instead of taking up precious resources. But the idea that an individual has to work incredibly hard and then also be responsible for accidents and mishaps seems to stand outside of the social contract. It seems like, I don't know, as an American, I would like the people around me to be the healthiest they can be so they can work the hardest that they can. There's no point in having someone be sick and not be able to take care of themselves. That's less productivity in the world. How can you have a motivated person who has to worry about their health every day? How can anyone contribute to society that has to only be concerned with their own health and how to pay for it? We're a nation of workers. We're strong working. People say that's too much. We work too much. Well, you know what? No. Working is amazing. We do things that no one else does. That's why our art is better. Because we work like fucking insane people. And at the end of the day, we have something to show for it. Granted, we're not as cultured or as knowledgeable as, say, the rest of the world. But, in the sands of time, I would rather be a worker who has created a strong and stable pyramid than to be another nomad lost. This being said, I am sick, and I have incurred hospital bills that I will never be able to pay, unless some miracle of financial engineering happens in my life. So, I actually would like to pay these bills. I would like to walk to the hospital that saved my life and say, thank you for saving my life. Here's the money I owe you. Thank you. But the system is made so I can't do that. I can't do that by working. I can't do that by anything, really, because I'm without power to do so. Also, this is maybe off topic, but nothing is off topic when there is no topic. I came specifically to Manhattan to get healthcare, emergency healthcare, because everyone I talked to told me to not go to Brooklyn. And I've taken friends to the hospitals in Brooklyn and was appalled by them. And that's largely because of where I live. I live in a poverty-stricken part of the city. And because of that, the hospitals in the area don't receive the kind and type of money that is required to be a good hospital in a good way. And the populace that they serve doesn't know better because they're not told better. They're not told that they deserve better. And they begrudgingly and woefully accept what they're given as being what they get. Why there isn't a huge mass exodus every time anyone has any problems to Manhattan, I don't know. So why is healthcare here in Manhattan? I'm staying here in Manhattan right now. Doing so well. Money. There's lots of money here. And I'm taking advantage of that. I went to a place that I knew was good, even though I knew I couldn't afford it. But it's better than going to a bad place I knew I couldn't afford. So, now what? A little bit more. Let's see. A little ball inside. Anyway. I don't think this video is art. I don't want you to think that it's art. It's more just me being trapped and trying to talk to somebody. Hopefully you, if you've listened this long. We're approaching the 30-minute mark. I want to thank you for that. I've decided I'm going to go through the entire regimen of gentamicin. if you want. So let me tell you about exactly what I was born with. So, imagine when you were in school, the anatomy of the heart. So there's the four chambers, boom, 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 right? So one side, or actually, yeah, so this pumps to the lungs, and then this part pumps in from the lungs, and back out again. Alright, and then this side, body, body, circle. Okay, cool. But then the blood, oxygen, into the lungs, get some oxygen out of the lungs, into the body, out of the body. No oxygen when it gets out of the body. Okay, so the bottom part, when I was born, didn't have a wall between the two parts. But it also, the tube that's supposed to go to the lungs, or to the body, and the tube that goes to the lungs, were one solid tube that had a split at the top. That was called truncus arteriosus. So, the split meant that the pressure to the lungs was really high, and the pressure to my body was really low, and the oxygenated blood and the unoxygenated blood mixed. So, at 6 months, they noticed a problem. I was turning blue, and I had my first surgery. They used porcine valves, which are basically from a baby pig, to replace the parts that were missing in my heart. Brilliant doctors. They'd only recently figured out how to fix this thing that was happening in my body. I'm actually one of the oldest people who has this problem, because everyone else earlier died because there was no solution. And even for people with this condition, I'm relatively healthy. I am a big guy. I'm a big guy. Big guy. Anyway, I'm very thankful for all that. I had another surgery at 3 that corrected that with a homograph, which is a person part, and then another surgery at 10 with another human part. So, the homograph was put in place and expected to only last 8 years. I mean, they didn't know. It's a new thing. So, 20 years later, it's still in me. Beaten away. That's the major concern for the infection in my blood, is that it would find some crevice in some suture in my heart and manifest what they call a vegetation. That it would become a chunk of something. And the chunk is the dangerous part, because that can break off and travel through your body and give you a stroke or a heart attack, or, cut off the circulation in some extremity. And that's bad. So that's what I'm fighting right now. That's what my medicine is fighting, is the possibility of sudden death through vegetation. So when anyone says that they're a vegetarian, I get very frustrated and angry, because they have no idea. That's really insulting to me. Anyway. But the amount of antibiotics that I'm on makes me a little loopy, a little drowsy, a little fatigued all the time. And this thing in my arm, it's called a PICC. Anyway, so the tube goes into my heart, but it's only held on by these two sutures. Right? That's what keeps it from getting pulled out if anything happens. But I'm not really supposed to do anything with this arm other than, light movement. But soon I'll be done taking the gentamicin, which is the more dangerous of the two drugs that I'm taking. And then I might have more energy, which means maybe I can work, which means maybe I can make some money to maybe pay off the debt that I have incurred. This is all besides the point of the student loan debt that I have. But I'm hopefully going to defer that for a little while, because there's no point in trying to lift weights when you're dog paddling for your life. Unless you're really strong. I mean, there's some people who are like really strong and they can just forever. I like to think that I am like Van Gogh, falling apart, dying every day, a little bit more, trying to say something that is on the tip of everyone's tongue. But what a foolish idea that is. How do I know that I have anything to say that's worth saying? How do I even understand the thing that I think I have to say, and is the ways that I know how to say things worthy of the things that I have to say? I like to paint. I like to talk about painting and to paint. But what is a painting? Is a painting even the thing that I think it is? Or have I concocted a very strong case of displacement? That's something I should explore in my work. It sounds really boring. Why would anyone want to see a painting about that? Maybe I should make sculpture. Maybe I should make video art. Maybe that's how I'll truly say the things that need to be said. Maybe I can transform culture through the constant repetition of form. Maybe I can change myself through the constant repetition of form. Maybe forcing myself to think about the ways of transformation is itself a form of transformation. Maybe by engaging in the engagement of the non-engaged painting, I have actually re-engaged painting into engagement of culture. Can a painting which says nothing really be saying the most important thing, which is that nothing is everything? Maybe there's a way that we can construct space in a two-dimensional plane to construct a three-dimensional idea about four-dimensional space. Maybe the types of ideas and thoughts that I have are actually reflections of a transcribed two-dimensional space, which is an idealized painting space that exists in my brain, that I then transform into three-dimensional space through the perception that I have that there is three-dimensional space, but I only perceive it as a two-dimensional thing. Granted, I have two eyes, which allow for a three-dimensional conception, but those two eyes are very closely related, and I only have a three-dimensional perception of things that are close. But maybe painting should just be about the text. Maybe that's what the problem is. That there is a problem, and that problem is a language problem. And that language problems can only be solved in language, because how can you solve a problem that's in language with anything other than language? Maybe that's the problem. But if you try to solve a language problem with language, are you only then reinforcing that problem with language? Maybe it's important that the language that exists within the problem be subverted by a non-verbal, non-literary, language-based language. Perhaps a visual language. But then visual language, is that then subjected to the same sort of cultural mores as any other language is? can you construct visual space that exists as a language space? Is language space space? When I say the word space, what am I implying? Am I implying that there is some sort of Cartesian space? Or is space something that's more ambiguous? Or is it a metaphor that my mind uses in order to explain relations of things that are not the same? Do I say that the idea of tree and the idea of shrub exist in separate spaces? And why do I say that? Why do I say that ideas exist at all? And let alone give them some sort of spatial quality? Am I then trying to conform the qualia of tree and shrub to the qualia that I perceive in everyday existence? Does the spatial sense that my body makes transfer itself into my mind? You can say that there is actually a map of my own mind and of the room that I'm in my head. So, could then the metaphor of that kind of spatial logic be used by other parts of my brain in order to describe the types of relationships that ideas have to themselves? If, for instance, we were talking about the relationship between trees and shrubs, vegetation, these trees and shrubs, the defining characteristic that differentiates them, trunk, height, very ambiguous things that must be parsed out. But then these are the spatial qualities of the definition of those things. But they themselves exist again in another space. So the Venn diagram of tree shrub has nodes between it that are the definition of the space, but those things are in and of themselves explanations of further space. So, when I approach a tree next to a shrub, I spatially see them as different objects, but then I also conceptualize them as different objects. And those different objects then exist in my brain spatially different. That treeness and shrubness are inherent qualities of words that I have used to describe what I've seen. But the words that I've used to describe what I've seen are inherently part of the nodal context of the language that is in my brain. Then again, how do I think of the words that I'm about to say and construct the ideas that I want to perceive? Do I react only to the world that I am perceiving, and therefore the reaction is then the actual thought processes? Or are the thought processes happening parallel to the perception of the world, and that the perception of the world is then a reaction to what the internal processes are doing? So if I am fixated upon the number 12 and I go walking around and I see the 12 everywhere, so that's not a quality of the world per se. There are other numbers there as well, but my perception of wanting to see 12 or focusing or fixating upon 12 causes my perception. But does the causing of the perception exist because of prior contextual information presented through the environment? So maybe I saw a lot of 12s in the morning when I was looking at the paper, and that's what inspired my 12 day. So the 12s are initially a environmental problem, which then become a mind problem, which then again become an experimental external problem. So it's like learning a new word. You see the word once. You've probably seen it a million times, but have never actually seen it. But this time it's important, and you know what it means now. And then you see it everywhere. And then you see it once in a while after that. So, in this context, we must then look at education of the individual and the importance of autodidactism. The importance then of the study of anything exists to the person themselves. But they won't know the importance of a thing that they need to know until they need to know it. Unless cooler minds ahead of time have planned out what proper things are needed to are necessary in order to produce the type of thought patterns which will then recognize useful information in the environment around it. So, then, perhaps we should think about education in a different way. Language seems to be very front-end loaded, where the rules and ideas of it are taught at a young age, and then everything else is pretty much just vocabulary and semantics and all that stuff. Is visual culture then equally taught, but not necessarily through visual or through language-based processes? Children watch a lot of television, usually, and see a lot of ads, and are generally made familiar with the world through visual information that is not necessarily language-based. So, they have an incredible understanding of what visual language is and what their expectations of it are, but don't necessarily understand it as something that can be looked at critically. In the same way that, perhaps, a text can be seen as something that can be looked at critically. You can break apart an Edgar Allan Poe poem in high school, but you're never asked to break apart an advertisement or a painting unless you're taking a very awesome art class. We're not given the rules, and the rules change constantly, so maybe that's a reason why we're not at a young age given the perception that we have any sort of faculty for critiquing things in the world that we see, and the ideas of the things that we see necessitate. The bag is now, you can see, much more defined in there. Little sphere inside of this. Amazing material. This should become a sculpture. Yes. Perhaps I am the sculpture. I am both Adam and Eve holding the apple and serpent. I am Orpheus. I'm Oedipus, plucking my own eyes out. I am Orion, swinging my weapon. Perhaps the logical breakdown of visual culture is not necessarily important anymore. Perhaps, like a twig in a river, one must just go with the flow. That while visual culture may be important and ever-changing and probably the most insidious and insightful aspect of everyday culture, it is something that shouldn't even be looked at in a critical way, but then just must be embraced, like love. It only will work if you don't think about it. As soon as you do, it falls apart and you are left alone forever. And that's not true. In fact, the most healthy relationships are ones where both partners are ready and willing to talk about things. So, I would say the anti-authoritarian artistic view that we must ignore the thoughts that are possible is the most ludicrous and idiotic thing in the world. That to reject your own ideas about the very things that you enjoy in the world is suicide, because you are hoping that by neglecting your own thought that you will somehow encourage others to embrace what you are doing. You are ashamed of yourself, and you are ashamed of how you feel, and that is so sad. So, how do we remedy this? Well, let's just start off with an initial idea. Let us take, for example, any image. What can we think about that image? Well, there's the initial thoughts that are present from the viewer themselves. And then there's the thoughts that are present from the cultural context from which this thing comes. The cultural context is important, but in 100 years, who cares? I think we must come up with a systematized understanding of approaching information that is visual. That, while it may be wonderful that a certain person of a certain type of culture has produced a certain type of thing, that is historically interesting, like going to a museum and finding that a certain native tribe has produced a certain type of bowl. But then you are completely ignoring the fact that this bowl is something that is interesting to look at and useful and has its own essence and presence. If the only interesting thing about a thing is who made it, then there is a lot of very interesting toilet paper in the world, shat on by some very interesting people. But that's not the case. It is the quality of the thing itself, in and of itself, to the world, for use. And use may come in and out of vogue, but that does not necessarily mean that the vogue is the end-all be-all of the utility of an aesthetic object. The object may be useful from time to time, just as bell-bottoms. So we may find a Jackson Pollock useful again and again, but not necessarily consistently. And that is fine. Any sort of consistency in any sort of culture is boring. Must I always find Manet to be perfect? He is, but he's not. And it changes from moment to moment. It depends upon which painting and my own feelings about it. And those feelings then prescribe the type of thoughts that I have when I am approached by such a thing. How can I possibly respond to a Rothko unless I have previously understood the Rothko or similarities to a Rothko and have digested the information that is required to appreciate the thing? How can I be expected to appreciate something by itself, unless it is by itself worthy? There are things that are worthy. There are things that, without context, create their own context. And, I mean, ultimately, those are the things that we should be talking about the most, because they seem to be the most useful. But, then again, are these ideas purely just ones that I'm having now, and are not necessarily true because I approached a thing that I think has no context because it creates its own context, because I'm unaware of how important its context is in my own understanding of it. And so I disregard its context in order to receive the thing without the context. Can you perceive that this context is then something that is other than what it is? If you're unaware of it, if you are in it, then as a fish in a fishbowl, you may be aware of the world around you, but the bowl in and of itself is an extension of you. Your ideas are an extension of you, and if your ideas do not encompass the very thing that you are trying to get at, how can you possibly understand the thing that you are trying to get at that isn't in the context that you want? It's like reading James Joyce. Is James Joyce really good? Or must you have read so many other things in order for James Joyce to even make any sense? Must you have a context for language that is more than your own. It may be brilliant, but it isn't brilliant universally. And does that matter? Do you need a universality? Can things have a universality? Is there such a thing? I mean, in my own work, I approach this with ancient-looking objects. Totally false and fake, whatever. But the idea is that they have no context to the people who are looking at them, because they have no history. They're historyless. There is no history to them. Historyless. So without history, then their context exists only as the thing that it is. But the thing that it is not connected to any culture specifically, other than the culture of art. So, I mean, I fail in that context, is that I'm in the culture of art and I can't escape the culture of art because it is an art object presented in an art context. But other than that inherent problem, it is something that, again, only has the context of itself, because it is indecipherable in a way that allows for more of a Rorschach test than a concrete object. The idea of a specific object is good, but specificity in an object can cloud the mind into making the thing that is being perceived into an iconic ideal. Whereas something that is more shifty, something that you approach, and it never quite stays the same, no matter how many times you look at it, then specificity can then be the enemy of, I think, what we would like the art object to do, which is to provide a safe space for universal philosophical debate. So, what do I mean by universal philosophical debate? Let us take, for example, this thing that is attached to my arm. It has a purpose, it has a meaning, it has a desired consequence, it has a cultural context, it has material presence, it has all these things. But those things are specific to it. It is possible then, maybe, or even if it's not possible, it should be pursued with the most fierce chasing as possible, the creation of an object which will not stand up for anything, that is not right-winged or left-winged or pro or anti or external or internal, that does not allow itself to be taken as concrete, thus allowing anyone to perceive it correctly. That no one can approach an object and have a wrong idea about it. That anyone, from a newborn to the Nazi general to the hippie to the Peace Corps to the... you get what I'm getting at, can look at the thing and read their own ideas onto it. But because anyone can read their own ideas onto it, it is then ripe for debate. So, let's say the Nazi general approaches a thing and sees in it himself and his own ideals. But then the hippie walks up beside him and does the same, sees his own ideals in the thing. Then, when they talk, they will destroy themselves, because everything that they wanted in this thing turns out to also serve somebody else. And that is the fucking best. To deny everybody that solid rock that they want. Because there isn't a solid rock. And that's something that we need to know. Maybe I'm just being a dick, I'm sorry. There is a solid rock, it's God, or it's peace, it's love, it's acceptance, it's the ebb and flow of the universe, it's waves, it's, whatever. But let's just say that that's not true. Let's say that there isn't something concrete by which we can know the world. It is then the artist's job to remind everybody who looks at their work that the concreteness of the thing that they are looking at is not that anyone can see what they're seeing and see what they want to see in it. And that means that what they want to see in it, or do see in it, is false. Just as false as the other person's thing that they see in it. Art needs to be meticulously designed to do such a thing. That it can do this thing is possibly impossible. I think that it is possible. I think it's something that we can work very, very hard at. I mean, for centuries and millennia, art has always existed to be a describing factor for something else outside of the world. You know, whether it's heaven or a perfect Mondrian plane, whatever. But, or even specific objects. It's like the ideal object that I'm supposed to be perceiving in this thing. But let's say there is a non-ideal object, an object that defies specification, that allows correctness to be absolute in every viewer, and therefore to deny correctness to all viewers uniformly. That is, I think, the greatest goal, and something that I would like to accomplish. And I think I have somewhat in some pieces, but it's far off. I mean, I've got a long journey. And, you know, people might say, well, why don't you just paint red squares or blue triangles, because those are universally just what they are. But that's the thing, is that they universally are what they are. It is a blue triangle. It's something that as a viewer I walk up and I say, this is a blue triangle, and it doesn't mean anything to me. So I need the thing to be perceived as having meaning, but that meaning to be so completely opaqued by the conscious thought of the artist as to allow anyone to put their own tablecloth on that table. That if you want it to be about abortion, it's about abortion. If you want it to be about the macro, micro, it's that. If you want it to be about life and death, it's about that. If you want it to be about your hatred of a certain culture, it's about that. It's about whatever you want, because let's be honest, it's all a made-up pastiche. It's something that we lay upon this world. So we need to make those kind of objects. But they need to be made. They need to be manufactured and produced by the artist. Because saying, you know, that this found object exists in that way has a problem, because it has the history of its own production and has the history of its own cultural context. So it's production, not the artist's. So the artist had no specific involvement other than the choosing. We've played that out. That's been played out. Let's play. Why are we doing that anymore? Like, yeah, we get it. Artists can contextualize something and bring its legitimacy into the world through their own selecting. Cool. Alright. So we did that how long ago? And we're still doing it? Okay. So, secondly, that it has a cultural context, right? So, the soup can, fuck it, it's a soup can by Campbell's, and has a cultural context, and has a meaning. And maybe many different people can read onto it what they want. But it still functions very specifically. So the fact that anyone is still fucking putting Marilyn Monroe on anything is a fucking nightmare. I can't believe that there is still any tendency to even look at her face. I understand that she was awesome back in the day, cool, but those days are over. There are other things happening right now, much more important things. There are people dying right now for some really fucking stupid reasons. So let's stop looking at stupid shit and start thinking about the problem of thought. The problem that we can try to make our context so infallible that it runs over entire countries and destroys them. So, anyway, let's work on that. I'm sorry, I'm so negative, guys. I'm not so negative. It must be because I'm so sick. Oh, look at the little balls getting down really small. Yes. Anyway, so, let's talk about hate a little bit. Because I think it needs to be in art more. And not in like a, I hate the world teenage way, but I mean like, really, a very strong, like, hate. So, we talk about trying to, you know, encourage love in the artistic world, we should try to embrace the world, which, yes, we should embrace the world, but let's make the idea of the world not be something that is a cultural context for our own specific culture, but maybe something that's more appropriate towards the possibility of a more objective understanding of the world. So, um, you know, maybe I'm supposed to embrace the capitalism that I exist in, and that will then make me happy. Why do I want to be happy? I mean, let's think about what this whole thing is doing, right? And granted, it sucks being unhappy. Definitely sucks being unhappy. But how insane is it to try to pretend to be happy participating in something that is really destructive? I mean, granted, being unhappy sucks, but the reason you're unhappy is there's probably a lot of things that you know are happening that you don't want to be happening. And granted, that makes you depressed because you feel powerless. But let's not be powerless because you can do anything you want. Um, and let's not get too crazy. People are not watching. But seriously, things can get pretty crazy. They do. Um, yeah, so let's not be depressed like little teenage bitches, but let's then approach the world with contempt because we need to change it because there are people who are basically slaves and there are people who die very young from horrible things that could be prevented, but we don't do it because there are so many problems in between the thing that could help them and them that it never happens. um, yeah. And I mean, I don't want to harp on how horrible the world is, but it's pretty bad. And come on, stop being all friendly about it. Let's stop sending out love and peace, like as if just the act of sending that out is important, because that is very easily corruptible. So, I mean, I was a very hardcore Christian for a very long time, and got into the practice of when hearing something bad was happening in somebody else's life to pray. And praying was really important to me and allowed me a certain amount of passivity when I should have been active. And I regret that a lot. Um, but I was very active too. I definitely, I I did try to put my money where my mouth was. Anyway, negativity is important. Gotta negate, gotta hate, because yeah. But let's not complain. Let's not be one of those. You know, let's be proactive. Let's be proactive in our contempt. Um, it's like I'm stuck in this position right now, and I have some very wonderful friends who are being very supportive. Definitely, I love them. They've been wonderful beacons in this health care crisis that I'm in. Um, but also the perception of that it's going to be okay is is lovely, but it also requires that things be okay. And if things aren't okay, what happens? So, you know, we say that everything works out, it all comes out in the wash. Everything works for the good of God. It's not over till it's over. It's not what the fat lady sings. It's great at the end. Whatever. Um, but that's just a delay method in producing change. So, if the idea is that good things will happen by the end, then it allows for the people who are actors in the thing that is happening to not act. And that is unfortunate. Often there is not action to be taken, definitely. But more often than not, incredible action is needed. So, um, ultimately, I just want to get down to brass tacks, which is healthcare sucks in America, and we need to reform it. Art objects need to be more serious and to take themselves seriously and to take the world seriously and the problems in it seriously by throwing them off and saying that they there is a space that can exist free from that. And lastly, that even though the world is a horrible, terrible place, and you're all going to die, that there are things that you can do that are meaningless, so meaningless that they have meaning, which is make art. Make art. Everyone should do it. There should be a collapse of money, and it should just be an art economy. That everything is done. You can create your own money by just making things and exchanging them with people. Maybe you don't want to make art objects. Maybe you want to make shoes. Do that. That's great. So yeah, let's try to be the best people in the world. That way we can look at everyone else and say that they're horrible, and then we will always be free from the tyranny of the other, and in ourselves have all the authority that we need to function in order to dominate the world. And then we can, as masters of it, produce as we wish the world that we would like in our own image, which then would be a destruction of all that we have cared for in the world. And then we alone will exist in the empty space of the universe and absorb all of the energy and produce in ourselves crystal beings which will always exist. Light knuckle, motherfucker! Alright, looks like we're getting to the end. This is the end. The end of the gentamicin. The end. I think I'd like to close this with a thought experiment. So, if you're at home, or at work, or homeless at work, or workless at home, or maybe like a coffee shop, I don't know where else you would be watching this. I mean, I guess if you had like a really nice phone and had portable internet access, you could be watching on a phone. But seriously, this has been going on for a long. If you're still watching this, kudos, kudos. Um, I mean, what's the point? Because it's all going to go really poorly in, I don't know, pretty soon. Um, you know, buy a lot of gold. That'll be really useful when the world ends. Bullets. Don't buy guns though, just bullets. Guns are dangerous, but bullets, you can do things. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe don't buy bullets. Buy things to make bullets, like brass and lead. Yeah, buy gold, brass, and lead. Because then you can make. Oh, also silver. You don't know how weird things are gonna get. So I mean, did you know this? Did you know that silver is antibacterial? Like, that's why silverware was so useful back in the day. Is that microbes don't grow on silver? Yeah, like that's super important. We should really know that, because when things hit the fan, having silver around will be a really good way to keep things from going bad, because you can just have silverware out and be able to use it, and if there's no water because you've used all the water up, then there you go. You have something that you know is going to be antibacterial. So, and there's people who eat silver, silver oxide, I think, and they turn blue. It turns you blue. I actually have a very big fantasy of like knowing that I'm going to die in the next few months, and doing that, eating a lot of the stuff that makes your skin just blue, like blue, 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 and then at the same time growing my hair out and shaving and trying to look as much like Shiva as possible, and dress up as a Shiva and just go out and try to scare the shit out of people until I die. Yeah, I mean, that'd be awesome. I mean, shit. I should just do that now. I don't know if that would pay the bills, and I'm pretty sure my girlfriend wouldn't like that. She probably, I don't know. It's not like it would, you can't change, like, you're done. Like, if you're blue with that stuff, you're staying blue for the rest of your life, girlfriend. So, yeah. I wonder, I've only seen white people do this. I wonder if what happens if you, because I'm Cuban, I have a more swarthy complexion, so maybe that'll be something else. Maybe I'll turn like a weirder green. I don't know. But I'm pretty white in the winter, so I just have to stay like in wintry climates where there's very little sun, and then I can be more blue. I mean, who would really want to do that? All right, I'm pretty sure I'm at the end. It's so hard to tell. It's like I want it to be over because I want to be able to just like let you get off of this because I know you're probably still watching it because come on, I'm really entertaining. And I have such important things to say that pertain to the things that you care about. Obviously, that's why I'm on YouTube and not sitting next to you right now. Because, you know, I think a real conversation with a person would be really weird, especially talking about the kind of things I'm talking about, which are pointless. So, yeah. Maybe if we treat the world more as hopeless, then we will behave better. I don't know. Does that help? Or do you need hope to be a better person? Do I act better if I know that things are going to go well? I guess, because if I perceive that there's a future, then I perceive there will be consequences to my actions now, whereas if I don't perceive there's a future, then I'll have a consequencelessness. So I guess it's important to have hope, even though, let's be honest, we're all going to die. It's going to be awful. Probably they'll be rioting in the streets and everyone will be eating babies. So, yeah, but let's pretend that that's not going to be the case, because then if we convince enough people to pretend that, then the smart people can get away, or at least eat enough of the people's babies to survive, while they're also hoping for a better future. I mean, really, the baby eating economy is going to be massive. Yeah. So, I have very little to say, and as is clearly seen, I am going to inject myself now with the last little bits to produce in me the most healthy me that I can. So back to the drawing board. Alright, so I've just finished my regimen of the gentamicin, and now, where first? No, let's be smart. Okay, so gotta keep it clean. Some more saline to go straight into my heart. Alright, so one of these. Alright, let's do a little pop that pussy. Pop it. Make it do it, girl. Oh, yeah. Stick it in, swirl it around. Pump, 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 pump. Pump, pump it up. Look at that go. Look at that go. Yeah! Pumping roids. Cause that's healthy to do. Cause it's healthy to do. Making roids in your body. And putting in heparin too. So this is heparin. It's yellow. It's actually always yellow. For those who have any kind of home care, remember, white for saline, yellow for heparin. Alright, so I'm taking the bubbles out, getting ready, pop, lock, and lock. And then squirt that in. Get the rest of it in there. And feeling good, feeling good, feeling... Oh my god! Alright. That's done. Lock it up. So it doesn't... It's funny, I've seen blood go the other way if I didn't lock it. It's like, gotta be smart, gotta remember to do that. Alright, we're good to go. Unlock, and I'm done. Thank you for sticking around while I've taken my medicine to keep me alive. This has been an insane talk chat thing with Nicholas Cueva, and you have been punked because you've wasted. It's like almost it's 100 and or no, sorry, it's 80 minutes. It's not that bad. It's like a movie. You watched a movie worth of this. Ugh, why? Oh man, you must be more bored than I am. And I'm at home with home care infusion because I can't do anything because I'm sick. You must be really sick. You should go to a doctor if you can afford it. But you can't because you watch YouTube instead of doing stuff that you should be doing. Let's be serious. You should be doing things right now. This has been a huge waste of time. There are things to be done. There's money to be making. Should I make the... I'm going to run the clock. Is that kosher to do on a YouTube video, to run the clock down? To make it like a full-length feature film length? I think I at least need another like 4 minutes. I think I need 85 minutes, and then that'll make me legitimately a movie star, because I think that's an okay time for movie length. I'm gonna put my little mesh thing sock back on. I'm gonna wrap it around my arm just so I can not have it get caught on things, which is really scary. I've had that happen already a few times. So check that out. It's like nothing's there, man. It's like I'm a normal dude, you know, just chilling by the lake, trying to get my something on, because I um that'll do.